Could we have a roll call, please?
Director Morgan? Present. Director Kildee?
Present here.
Secretary McDonald?
Here.
Chair Tremblay?
Present, and I think the record should reflect that my understanding is that the mayor is currently at a meeting of the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency, and so she's off doing other
Yes,
duties
she
on
is
behalf of
representing the city on an important matter in front of the GMA.
Right. So we will carry on in her absence. Flag salute. Mrs. McDonald, could you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Please rise and join us. With your right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I don't have any comment cards. Seeing no public comments. Why don't we go ahead and proceed to the consent calendar? We have one item.
Move the approval of consent calendar.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that is adopted on a 4-0 vote. Moving on to departmental. And the first item up, or the only item up, is the filter belt press rental pricing agreement.
Correct. Thank you. I have a short staff report on that. The board may recall that we've rented a filter belt press in the past during the winter months in need of aiding the dewatering process of our solids during the winter months, where typically moist conditions extend the drying time needed for the solids, and using the filter belt press helps speed up the drying process, freeing up drying bed capacity, which increases the overall efficiencies out of the plant operations. Staff has determined that there would be benefit from utilizing the belt press throughout the year at various times, again with the outcome of increased operational efficiencies at the plant. A new filter belt press to purchase would run $650,000, and in the next few years, the district will be embarking on a complete master plan of the district, including, and we're getting started on a separate pre-study of our biosolids handling process, and the results of that, in combination with our master planning effort over the next few years, will result in recommendations on how to further improve our biosolids handling process, and whether or not we're going to need to continue to use a type of solids press, filter press, or some other type of solids handling to improve the system, improve the handling of solids, is yet to be determined. So at this time, staff continues to recommend utilizing a rental agreement with Merrill for the filter belt press, and having that option available to rent over the next 3 years. There is sufficient funding in this budget year for that, for a yearly rental cost of $118,000 per year. So with that concludes the information I have for you tonight.
Questions? Mr. Khalid.
The maintenance of that, do they maintain it as well under our rental agreement with
That's correct. Any major items of maintenance, so Merrill provides the rental of the filter belt press for us, and our staff would do some minor, if there's oiling or greasing, or if a belt needs, a pulley belt or something needs to be replaced, we would go ahead and take care of that as a part of just normal plant operation maintenance. But any large ticket items, which again, if we would purchase one, would then be on us for maintenance. So yes, they maintain the equipment in working order.
Are there other questions? Comments? And just to reiterate one thing, Mr. Klotzel, my understanding is we really don't know after this, in the context of the master plan going forward, we really don't know if we would need a filter belt press in going forward at 5 years, 10 years from now.
That's correct.
So in my mind, leasing or renting makes sense. Okay. Do I hear?
Your Honor, I move the staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that's adopted on a 4-0 vote. All right. Any items from legal counsel? No. Any items from staff?
None.
Any comments from directors? All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting of the Sanitary District.
Okay.
I'll call the regular Camarillo City Council meeting to order for Wednesday, October 24th, and let the record reflect that all council members are present with the exception of our mayor, who is representing the city at another agency, and will be back at an appropriate time. Okay, amendments to the agenda.
No amendments.
No amendments to the agenda? Okay, we do not have any presentations tonight, so that gets us down to consent calendar.
Move the approval.
Second?
There's a motion and a second for the consent calendar. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes 4-1 with one excused absence. Okay. And that will get us down to Public Works. It is the Library Landscape Improvement LB 13-01 award of the contract. Do we have a staff report on that?
Yes, we do. Thank you. A brief staff report to summarize the project, and the action before you tonight is recommendation to award a contract to Marina Landscape Incorporated of Orange, California. Quick review of the project that has been in the works for some time, and identifying areas of improvement for the landscaping that are recommended and required out at the library. So, quick orientation, pretty well-known location of our library on Los Pozos Road at Fieldgate, just west of Lewis Road. And the areas of work are primarily the parking lot area, around the building itself, and then just to the east of the back of the building, and not including the open grass area further to the east. So we've got some representative shots of what's going to be going on out there. This is a view at the entrance and showing the last lone tree here at the entrance in the courtyard area. There are 4 locations of tree wells that were in the original installation. And primarily the issue with the trees that haven't done well out there is largely due to the compaction that occurred at the site for prepping the grading and the compaction, and then the planting of the trees and then the health of the trees have suffered because of that very well compacted area or ground that the trees were planted in. And so at the entrance here, the plan is to remove that last tree, and closer shot here, the metal support grating or cage that was there for the trees. Along with, essentially what's going to happen is that'll go away. The grate is going to get replaced with another ornamental flat grate with an access hole here. The electrical connection opportunities will still be there underneath a covering here. The lights will go away because there won't be anything left there to light at that time. So new grates will go in place here, again with the option for accessing that electrical connection underneath if needed for things that would happen and that would need electricity in the courtyard. Shot further down, looking at the entrance, you can see some empty tree wells here where distressed trees have been removed in the past. These trees should be larger by now, so just indication of poor performing because of the soil conditions. Another tree here. This this tree will be removed. The other landscaping will be removed as a part of that, and enhanced additional shrubs and ground cover will be also installed as we go through this replacement of trees and landscaping. Moving on to the back of the library, this is what we call the runnel, a water feature that is not in use, and the project calls for removal of the long concrete water structure here along with this here, and this whole area will be placed back with these pavers. We have pavers to match, so this will be all paver patio, and with an expansion over in this area of the pavers also expanding the patio. There's some furniture out. This is a shot was from a little while ago, and there is some benches and that out there now. I believe there will be additional, essentially patio furniture added there, along with enhancement of these landscaped areas on either side of this patio area. Another shot looking more to the southwest. This tree, typically should be performing better, so this will be replaced. Additional trees planted. This whole landscaping area will be enhanced to be very nicely landscaped at the completion of that work there. So general project information, we did receive 3 bids. We're recently opened, low bid, $264,500 from Marina Landscape. The estimate going into this bidding period, after we refined it through the final design, was $300,000. And our anticipated schedule for construction is to start next month and continue on into early 2019 with completion estimated in February. Summary of the proposed improvement. Removing the tree from the entrance and replacing those grates, removing the concrete runnel, extending the paver patio. The total count for new trees is 57. There is quite a few that had been removed. You know, it was a combination of the soil conditions along with the drought. We experienced higher numbers of tree removal citywide because of the drought. And again, enhancing the landscaping throughout those work areas with additional shrubs and ground cover. Also, there will be, we've already done some of this, roof gutters were added some time back with drainage. There are some areas that still can use some improvement for drainage. And we'll be adding some landscape drains along with that. Real quick summary of the tree types that we're going to be looking at going forward, as we'll call the peppermint gum, water gum, bubble gum, no, a London plane tree, hot pink crepe myrtle.
That's beautiful.
Strawberry tree. Again, these are very typical trees that do well here in Camarillo. Jacaranda. So a whole mix of these different types of trees, which will be better performing, will be planted in improved conditions as we rework the soil and the tree wells, add the proper amendments, and we're confident that we'll have good success with these trees. So in summary, the item before you tonight is a recommendation to award a contract to Marina Landscape in $264,500, along with a standard contingency for unanticipated extra work, possibly through the project, for total authorization of $304,500. We do anticipate the need for consultant services for materials review and testing through the project. We would utilize an existing on-call contract for that. A ballpark estimate of $30,000 for a total project, as shown there, the $334,500. Our current available budget in our current fiscal year 18-19 CIP is at $189,000 balance, requiring an appropriation tonight from available fund balance from the, let me get the name right, the Library Facility Fund of $145,000. So that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Consul?
Just one.
Morgan?
On those trees that we have, that we're putting all new trees, are you going to have some deep water routing system so that you have the pipes that go down there, not water up here?
Correct.
Great. Okay.
Ms. McDonald?
I do. Going back to the entrance and where the trees, obviously we know why they didn't do very well. They only had that little bit of ground that was probably good, and they got down to clay, which we all live on. But there's nothing we can do to put a little bit of green in there, since we have the, and then my other question is, with the lighting, something that we could do to help light that courtyard more, rather than just taking them all out?
So, there is, and it's not close enough up, but I don't know offhand if we are adding any greenery. I know there is opportunity around the fountain, I believe. I may have that wrong, if there's any opportunity for planting there. But really, I mean, the rest of the courtyard is all paved and all on compacted soil.
That's I guess what I'm looking for is some green in there.
Right,
but
right.
There's just no way you can bring
The only other
anything
thing
alive.
would possibly be some above ground, and then the difficulty with that is, in pots or planters, is getting water to it.
So those aren't watered? There's no sprinkler system at all now?
In these, I believe there is in these tree wells that were there specifically for those trees, and then we're trying to maintain the access for the electrical there also. So I believe this was discussed at least once or more with council at study session.
I was thinking we were going to end up with something. They just weren't going to be the big trees, but maybe I'm not remembering it right.
Yeah, this was the recommendation that we landed on.
But there is the ability, you're not taking it out, so at some time in the future, we just have to change the grade out again if we decided we wanted pots or other lighting or something. It could be added, because you're not going to totally
Right.
tear out what's there.
Right.
Even if there's sprinklers or a system there, you'll just cap it off. You won't
Right.
pull it all the way
Yeah,
through.
it'll be capped off, and I believe it's being filled up with gravel, so we don't have a water nuisance there.
Right.
From.
But it will be accessible, so if
Right.
sometime in the future, okay.
Anything else?
That's it, thank
Mr.
you.
Trimley, anything to I have two questions. One, Marine Landscape, I'm not familiar with them, but have they done work here in the past, or have you checked their references? And
We do our standard review of their. I'm not positive if any of their recent project references included any work here in Camarillo. I don't recall that we've used them real recently, but we do a full review of any bidders' information with references.
also, the type of trees, will there be a number of different trees, or will you try to go with one or two maybe for consistency, or what's kind of the game plan on that?
Yeah, it's a full mix of the. Just looking at the plan real quick here. 7 of the peppermint gums, 14 of the water gum, 4 of the London plane trees. So it's a whole mix. 10 of the crepe myrtles. Located where they're going to do the best throughout the site. And then also a variety of sizes depending on the location or where they're going in. The larger open space areas where there's going to be obviously a larger tree, we're going with some 48-inch box trees, some good-sized trees there, some 36-inch box trees, and then the rest, the smallest we would do is a 24-inch box tree.
Okay, and how long do you think it'll take them to start to grow? I mean, are these, pretty rapid grow trees, or are they ones that take?
It's a mix. It's a mix again.
Okay,
I mean, the crepe myrtles are typically a little slower growing. Some of the other varieties are quicker or faster growing, but it's a whole mix of times for them to mature and grow.
Okay. All right.
You
Thank you.
just have to tell Mr. Kildee how many jacarandas.
Yeah.
That's one of his favorites.
The plan calls for 2.
Two. All right.
At least there's 2.
Has the color.
That's right. Okay. Are there any other questions or anything? What's the will of the council?
Move the approval.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes 4-1 with 1 excused absence. Okay, so that gets us down to B, and it's the State of California Department of Transportation Freeway Maintenance Agreement. Do we have a staff report on that?
Yes.
Consul?
Yeah, it's me again. So in the recent years, Caltrans has updated their standard form freeway maintenance agreements that they're applying statewide and going to various cities, including us, requesting an updated freeway maintenance agreement, essentially to replace what we have as a mix of agreements covering various areas throughout the 101 corridor through Camarillo. So they've presented their standard agreement, and we've had quite a bit of back and forth with Caltrans to clarify and verify what all they're going to continue to maintain and what the city will be responsible to maintain, and the agreement spells out and clarifies those responsibilities. The agreement provides for Caltrans to continue to maintain the freeway corridor proper, we'll call it, including all pavement, the striping, weed and trash abatement, graffiti abatement, all the structures, the bridge structures, and the on and off ramps, and the signals at those ramps, as well as all the landscaped areas up and down with a 101 in Camarillo, except for the Springville Interchange landscaping, which there is a separate agreement which will survive, specifically a separate landscaping maintenance agreement for that area. So we will continue to maintain that as it is today. The agreement spells out that the city would be responsible for maintaining on those roads, city roads that cross over or under the 101 freeway. The city is responsible for maintaining the asphalt, striping, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, catch basins, the bridge railing and fences, essentially everything above what we call the bridge deck, the structure of it, the wearing surface, and everything above, street lights, the signs on those streets, overpasses and underpasses, which by and large the city already maintains those items, and often as a part of, as we just did, we repaved Carmen up to the bridge deck, and we're getting ready to redo all the striping out there, so that fits right in with what this agreement. We're already doing a lot of what this agreement is saying that the city's going to be responsible So there is another additional existing agreement that is going to survive. I mentioned the signals at the on and off ramps. Those are Caltrans owned and operated signals. However, there has been a long-term agreement in place for many years where the city pays the electricity, the signal electricity there, and Caltrans does the maintenance on that. Except for we also maintain the internally illuminated street name signs at those signals also. Caltrans standard is now to go to a reflective sign with no inside lighting on that sign, and the city has maintained that we want to keep those internally illuminated street name signs, so we also maintain those. So that staff and attorney review of the agreement has resulted in an acceptable agreement, we feel, to move forward with, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
One question.
Mr. Morgan?
I think a couple of years ago when at Earth, I brought the regional rep that was out there for the Earth Day thing and showed her the bridge, the central bridge. She saw it all chipped up and messed up. She saw it right away. Well, who takes care of that roadway? That's ours. It looks so nice. I said, well, if we fixed it, can you do the agreement to overlay that occasionally? And I said, I'm sure the staff will work with you. Is that part of that too?
So this is actually part of the outcome of them going forward, and so Caltrans ended up repaving all of that.
That's right.
Current, with the understanding that we would be moving into this new agreement, updated agreement, where the next time out there, it'll be city's responsibility to do any maintenance on that asphalt that's out there now.
That's exactly what we came to that day. That was great. Good.
Yes, at least now we can do it.
Ms. McDonald?
I do. So we talked about Springville, and we know we're not going to let them touch that. Is there anything else that will really change from what we see, that will, major changes from what we practices right now?
No, other than, and Councilmember Morgan touched on it a little bit, or you even mentioned also, when there is a need to get out there and do something quickly, and the provision is in here that we would essentially have pretty much a standing permit to go out and do these types of maintenance work. So we're not, sometimes in the past, we've been held up on trying to get approvals and permits through Caltrans to do some simple maintenance work, where this then will provide to do that in a more expedited fashion.
So this actually is a good thing, then,
Yes.
to get it all written out and delineated.
Right.
Sounds good.
Tremblay, anything? One question. I think most, if not all of us, have gone to, I think it's the city of Calabasas, and they've got, on that new bridge,
That's nice.
they have, the city of Calabasas. Was that something that the city paid for, or was that something that Caltrans, or do you?
Good question on the particulars there. More than likely, the city had some involvement in that. Often it's done when there's a new interchange, a new bridge built, and it's some of the enhancements that are included in that project. So it's really, I imagine it's a case-by-case basis where, I've seen that in other,
Have you seen that in
other
other
cities also. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I've seen it several times.
If we ever do Central, that's what we add to the Central Bridge.
Yeah.
Down by Pasadena and places like that, they do have it written on the bridge.
But this one's contributed to that. Really pretty.
Yeah, so we
It
know,
really stands out.
and
doesn't
in
it?
Westlake also is where that was done, and we know that the city of Westlake contributed to that.
Okay.
So if I follow along those lines, that if whoever's here when they do Central, that would be the time, because it would be really the entrance to
Correct.
the city. So
Sure.
put that in somebody's tickler.
Any more up-to-date news on the bridges, guys? Are they saying anything about when or if they're going to work on those bridges so we can expand bridges?
Not any definitive schedule yet, other than there is the action that's ongoing through VCTC. What's called the PA and ED phase of the 101 corridor widening study that's ongoing. So that is going to determine the most feasible option for adding any lanes and any widening, and they're looking at each of the bridges on the entire corridor to determine what would need to be widened and what is sufficient now.
Well, VCTC mentions the Oxnard 5th Street Bridge all the time, but I haven't heard anything on the other two. That's why I want to get a little update and see if we are even getting close.
It's part of the study as they're looking at the whole 101 corridor, where The other one isn't on the 101, and that's why they're taking care of that one separately. But it has been mentioned, and we're not the only bridge. There's another one. Ventura's got some issues, too, as they work their way through the county, but Central Avenue is one of the worst.
And I will mention that staff is on that ongoing process right now where VCTC has a consultant on board, and all the stakeholders are involved in regular meetings. We have a presence at those meetings, and we'll continue to have a presence throughout that process.
All right, anything else? So will the council then on this?
Go ahead and move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes 4-1 with one excused absence. All right, so that gets us down to closed session. We do a couple of different ways here. We can do our oral communications now if we want to, or we can wait till after the 7:30 when the mayor's here. If you'd like to wait, you can certainly do it that way. What would the council like to do?
Why don't we do that?
She may have a lot of things to report. I think we should wait.
So why don't we wait for oral communication till the 7:30 part of it then? Mr. Tremblay, do you?
The only thing is that under oral communications, I think we've all been receiving some emails relative to default tier rates on Clean Power Alliance. And I would like to be able to talk about that a little bit under comments. But I guess if we wait until 7:30, that's not a problem.
Yeah, we don't have.
Should we?
It might be best if we, maybe do that now. Mr. Norman?
Yes. In fact, we have plenty of time here before the 6 o'clock session. We can have the council do the reports, and we can come back and have Charlotte report when she's available at 7:30.
That sounds good. So why don't we do our oral communication, then we'll get back, Counselor, with our closed session before we go to the study session.
Just think we had time now, so
Okay.
why not utilize it?
All right, so let's go down to the oral communications. And Mr. City Manager, do you have anything tonight?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, do you have anything tonight?
No items tonight.
No items tonight. Okay, so we'll go down to City Council. Let's start with Mr. Tremblay. Would you like to start with us tonight, Mr. Tremblay?
Sure I will. In terms of meetings attended, October 18 was I attended an EDC board meeting. On October 22, a Finance and Investment Committee meeting with the mayor, and then just earlier today, a Clean Power Authority Finance Committee meeting. There are some items from prior council meetings I just want to go through very briefly because I would like to talk a little bit with the Mayor Pro Tem's indulgence.
Sure. Proceed,
With
please.
CPA. But I just want to take a status report on some of the traffic-related items and a couple other items I brought up before. My understanding is that the Old Town traffic signal synchronization and crosswalk markings, that's under review by the Streets and Transportation Committee?
That's correct. We have a Streets and Transportation Committee meeting scheduled for November 14th, where
Okay.
that will be considered.
Okay, great. And then there are three items, I think, that the city traffic engineer is reviewing. The first is the left turns onto Lewis and Highway 34 from the Berry Street area. That was the first issue.
Actually, that will be reviewed during the EIR for that project. It won't be taken separately.
No.
Oh, that during the stock lumber?
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
the former stock lumber site?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then secondly, the Dawson Drive, the parking of the oversized vehicles in front of 555 and 531 Dawson and the
Right. We're reviewing that and the what improvements can be done there, possibly very simply by adding some red curb or extending the existing red curb that's already there. So that more than likely won't need a streets and trans consideration. We can just make those modifications. We're verifying the spacing out there so that we're minimizing any impacts to street parking, but maximizing the improvement of site distance.
Okay. Can you make sure that you let us know
course.
what's going on with
Yes.
that? And then in terms of just a look-see at the Las Posas Temple intersection, in terms of the incidents of traffic accidents
Correct.
recently,
Yes.
that's being reviewed by the traffic engineer?
Yes, it is.
And then two more items, if I may, Mr. Mayor. The first one, and it's airport authority related. I know that Kevin and Mike, I know you have a November 8th meeting of the airport authority. I have constituents who are telling me that there has been an appreciable increase in air traffic with light planes and over basically over the Nancy Bush Park area. And I want to make sure that we are responsive to that. I don't know whether there have been changes in flight paths or whatever, but this is something that I think you both were going to bring up at the airport authority, and I want to make sure we follow up on that.
I'm going to follow on that right now. I've had a trip out to the airport twice, and I spoke with her yesterday. And I've got all of her stuff, that her timing, because she didn't send it out there. Well, she was going to send it out. I told her, if we don't get any complaints, we don't know what's going on. And so she was going to list those and send a complaint. While I was walking her area there was nothing going over it. And I told her that I think that the staff out there, after I talked to them the day before, may have talked to the traffic controller, because it's not the ones that's going over Nancy Bush Park and making a right-hand turn. It's the ones that are going over Nancy Bush Park and going straight out northeast. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to go out in the valley a little bit more and go north. And so the staff, and by the way, Todd's back.
Okay, but I know, going back to the question, there was a specific set of monitoring data that
Yes,
I
I
know
got
she
that.
provided, and so I was curious what the response of the airport staff was to that monitoring.
I think that may have what slowed there's no traffic going over it yesterday when I walked, because they went to the tower to talk to them yesterday, or day before yesterday.
So this may be something that's just already resolved.
Yes. But we're going to keep watching it. Now, I've got her she's going to call me and take notes like she did.
Okay,
If
great.
it continues.
Okay, great.
Otherwise, we'll be discussing it at the next airport authority meeting also, just in case.
If you could discuss it at the next airport authority meeting, that would...
Well, we will. I'm chairman.
Okay, fine.
Let me add just a little bit, Mr. Tremblay. Unfortunately, the last meeting, I believe Mr. Morgan had a candidates forum. He was unable to make it. Unfortunately, I was on my way there, and my wife wound up in the emergency room, so I had to make a U-turn and go to the emergency room with that. However, I did talk to Jorge, and very on a preliminary basis, Jorge was said he was not aware of any inordinate amount of different traffic than what typically has been there. However, I did talk to the city manager, and I believe that there will be some discussions between the staff, and Mr. Morgan has some updated information.
I've already talked length.
We certainly can bring that back up at the appropriate time at the next meeting. Yeah.
That would be great. And then finally, on just pending issues, I think there may hopefully some on the cell phone coverage in the Las Posas area, northwest side of the city. I think hopefully there's some potential progress. I know, Mr. Clifford, you're following up on that.
That's correct, and we anticipate to hear from the provider soon on whether or not they are willing to take action.
Okay. Finally, and I know this is drawing out a little bit, and I apologize, but if you will indulge me for a couple of minutes, I think we've been getting emails relative to the default tier rate on Clean Power Alliance, and I want to just provide council members with a little bit of commentary on that, because it's not otherwise on the agenda. And I certainly understand and appreciate the perspective that is articulated in the emails, which, among other things, are advocating that the council choose a 100% default rate as opposed to the 36% default rate that the council previously set. At the same time, have to balance the need for environmental stewardship with the responsibility of being fiscally prudent on behalf of the city residents and city ratepayers, many of whom, I'll note, still really have no idea that we are going to be going into a transition as of early next year. I want to emphasize the rates are not yet set for 2019. The expectation is still that the CPA board will set those rates in the middle of next month, followed ultimately by the final rate-setting letter or advice letter from Edison, which will occur in about mid-December. Currently, the rates are unknown for 2019. We have forecasts and we have estimates, but that's all. They are estimates, and there are a lot of balls up in the air. And at the risk of complicating it, we had a lengthy Finance Committee meeting today for Clean Power Authority, and I want to just apprise the council members of a couple of facts coming out of that meeting. The updated estimates as of this morning's meeting, and this is kind of difficult and complicated news, these numbers could change, but about 48 hours ago, Edison filed an updated calculator with the PUC on how it proposes to calculate the PCIA rates. And you recall that those PCIA rates, for want of a better term, are an exit fee for Edison legacy costs when Edison customers leave Edison, because everybody will be in CPA unless they actually affirmatively opt out and go back to Edison as of early next year. But what was disclosed on Monday by Edison was the fact that, and it wasn't disclosed until Monday, that they had made a $200 million error in that PCIA calculator, rate calculator, and that is on top of a $750 million undercollection of rates by Edison for 2018, a very, very significant undercollection. The net impact is about is estimated, and all we have right now are forecasts, right? We don't know until everything is set at the end of the year, but the net impact is about a 75% increase to the PCIA for 2019, assuming that Edison receives and recovers all those funds. It's about $950 million overall. Now, CPA represents about, and I'm sorry to go into the weeds on this, but CPA represents about 15% of that load. It's about a $100 million amount, and that's a significant amount for CPA. It's a significant amount for anybody, right? Significant amount in particular for terms of setting rates. So what's the point? Well, we have a lot of balls up in the air, and for 2019, as of this morning, what we anticipate is as follows. It's anticipated that there will be somewhere between a 10% to 15% increase in power generation rates for both Edison and CPA customers. Okay, so 10 to 15% increase in rates. The way the market is right now, that could all change, but that's what the anticipation is. And about a 5% to 7.5% increase from SCE's base rate to a customer's overall bill for next year. If we were to go, for example, to a 100% default tier rate, then that would be an additional 7% to 9% additional cost on top of that increase in bills over 2018, the price over 2018. So that's if we went to the 100% rate. So I think it's important for the council to know that that could represent somewhere between a 12% to a 17% increase from 2018 bills. Now, if it was 100% default rate, if it turns out that way, that obviously represents a very significant increase to people's monthly budget, and especially for fixed income seniors, many of whom do not qualify for the CARE program, many of whom are, they don't qualify for a specific reduction program. So I'm really happy that this city has chosen to be part of CPA. I think it's important. I think it's a step forward. I will note again that the 36% renewables is 2% higher than SCE's current 34% renewables rate. I think very few residents, again, know about the program as yet, based on the questions I'm getting. And I don't know about you. My feeling is there's nothing wrong in waiting for this first year to roll out and then make a decision, another decision at that time. We can always reset that default tier.
Right.
And the city can change that default tier, and I note that residents can also increase that of their own volition if they wish to do so. But depending on how the transition goes, we also have to keep in mind that CPA relies on people staying within that program and not opting out and going back to Edison. I also don't want to cause an accelerated opt-out. So we have to balance. We have to balance this, and I don't want that to be damaging to CPA if there was a high rate of opt-out. So I'm sorry this is complicated, and I apologize for prolonging my under council comments, but I think it was important that the council know what was discussed in Finance Committee this morning. So, taking the long view and the prudent view, that's what I think we should focus on. So, thank you for allowing me to make an extended set of comments.
Can I respond to that just one second, Kevin? I'm glad you came to that conclusion because as you said that, I said, why are we going to do this and we don't even know what the increase is going to be? It could be substantial. So if we wait until we see where things are in the future, we can always, change. And I'm glad you brought that up and came forward to that conclusion.
Well, I wanted the council to be aware of the most recent developments, even as of 2 days ago.
Anything else, Mr. Trimbley?
No, thank you for letting me go on at length.
Mrs. McDonald, do you have anything?
I do. And
Tonight,
can I
please?
add something or ask a question on the electricity? I was looking at my Edison bill this month probably a little more closely than I might have otherwise. And I noticed, and then I got interrupted and I didn't go back to it. But there's something to the extent that they're now going to be offering different rates of renewable energy programs. Have you all talked about that and seen how that's going to compare to what the other program is?
There's a comparison, at least as of this point, as between CPA versus Edison, and the comparison right now is that what CPA refers to as the lien rate, which is at 36%, that would be about, under current estimates, about a 1.5% bill discount to the SCE base rate.
So Edison would be more to get to the 36% renewable.
Right. Well, actually, Edison's under 34% renewables, but in other words, CPA's lien rate at 36% would be about 1.5% less.
Less than Edison.
Right.
Okay.
Now, that also makes a fundamental assumption about what happens with the PCIA, or we'll just call it the exit fee,
Right.
and that's a worst case. Those are factored in. For the clean rate at the 50%, there is approximate parity. At least
So
it's
it still is,
anticipated.
even with what you-
Parity. It was originally, as of August, it was 0 to 1% discount, but now it's at parity. And then for 100%, currently it's noted in Finance Committee about an 8.5% bill increase to the SCE base rate.
But now doesn't,
Now,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mrs. McDonald, did I answer your question?
So if you were to choose under Edison's plan to go 100% renewable, your rates would go up 8.5%.
No, that's the 8.5, that's CPA's rate.
CPA's is more.
Edison's rate would be higher on the 100%, but I don't know what that, I'm sorry.
That's
I don't
what I
know
was
that would-
wondering if-
I don't know what that would be.
Maybe that's something, I don't know, do you all talk about that and comparing Edison to what you're going to do? Or?
Well, we do, but the challenge
Everybody's moving.
is there are so many balls in the air right now, including administrative proceedings at the PUC that we just don't know.
Yeah.
We won't know. We want to really have clarity on it until middle of December.
When you're talking about parity, you just got through going through a whole list of things that's not really, we don't know yet completely until we find out what's going to happen with that suit and the stuff that's going on. That parity at 50%, maybe more, we don't know yet until all this, what you talked about comes to fruition.
We do not know.
That's exactly.
There's an estimate, and it's anticipated there's parity, but we don't know.
No, don't know.
Ms. McDonald?
And I guess the good thing is that if someone truly wants that 100%, they can sign up for it.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not keeping them from doing it, so it's, so I appreciate all your hard work on this. This is probably more than you ever thought it was going to be.
It's pretty substantial.
It is. I just want to mention something, and we sometimes forget about all the resources that we have in our community. And VCTC has a really a great, in my opinion, website. And one of the things that is obviously at the forefront all the time, but it's ride sharing. And they have a really nice website that talks about different ways of doing it, carpooling, vanpooling. I just wanted biking, great bike maps throughout the county to get around. But there's one program that people may not know about, and I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid to carpool because I might get stuck somewhere and I can't get home, something happens. And if you go to their website, you can learn about what's called a guaranteed ride home. And if you're within Ventura County and something happens, and I think they give you two a month, so it's not supposed to be that you plan on it, but if a child gets ill, you had to work late that you didn't expect, they will help you in getting a taxi or other ways of getting home so that you would not be, or even a one-day car rental they'll assist with. So it helps with the people who were just a little bit uneasy about not having their car with them all the time. So I thought that was just a nice way of giving one more service to get people to ride share, carpool, ride your bike. I don't know if rain counts, but we don't get much of that. But anyway, go to the VCTC website and learn more about rideshare. And let's see, what else do I have? Oh, I did want to mention, I think there were 3 of us at an Eagle Scout ceremony on Sunday. And in my eyes, all Eagle Scouts are special. It takes a lot of work to get here, but that young man is certainly one of the ones who I expect to see great things from him. And I'm hoping that he really does manage to have a great life, because he's certainly got a great start. He was the Eagle Scout that work project was to teach what they call street CPR, and he did it at many events. I know at the concert in the park. Here is he, a 15-year-old, and he stood up in front of thousands of people and gave a great speech and didn't hesitate a second. So 1,600 that he done, that's amazing. If you think about it, if he saved one person's life is saved because of that. It's all worth it. And I have one other, I have 2 questions. Several meetings ago, we approved painting some red curbs out in one of the cul-de-sacs out in the Palancher Road area. Has that occurred yet?
It was in the industrial area off of, I believe it was signs put up for restricting parking there.
But I thought we were painting a red curb as well. Can you check on that for
Yeah,
me?
I can verify that, yeah. But we had approved that, and I haven't verified it personally that it's installed yet. But I believe on that cul-de-sac out that ends up at the farm, that there is no curb out there, so it was.
Oh, maybe that's why it wasn't. So the signs are supposed to do the same thing.
Correct.
So if someone is
Correct.
parking on that curb, then they can be ticketed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, if the signs
I'll
are
have them
installed,
check that.
which that was the plan, but I can verify that.
I thought there was a small curb, but maybe not enough to paint. Yeah, can't we paint rolled curbs? And people are parking there, and that's why, obviously, the signs haven't worked.
Okay, is that current report of people parking there? Okay, we can follow up on that, and of course, it's an enforcement item, too. If it's already posted, then parking is restricted, so we can coordinate with the PD on that, too, for enforcement.
Perfect. And my last thing, and this is a request of Mr. Vaca. I know it's election time, and a lot of things get said, and word gets out on different topics. And there was something in the Acorn that has led some people to believe that we have already taken a vote on the Camarillo Springs Golf Course, which we haven't. And can you just give us an update on where we are so the public knows that we have not voted on that?
Yes, the City Council authorized New Urban West to file an application for a general plan amendment, which they have been pursuing, and their first step has been to analyze floodway issues out there over the golf course property. But the City Council has not made any decisions one way or another as to an approval or denial of any entitlement associated with that property. And that would be forthcoming with public hearings that would first go to the Planning Commission, then ultimately to the City Council, and those would be advertised. And we would send notifications to all property owners within the Camarillo Springs community.
It couldn't happen without them all knowing. And we will notify the whole Camarillo Springs before
Yes.
those hearings happen.
Yes, we will.
Any idea time-wise, what are we looking at, 6 months, a year? Any guess on when we'll see that next?
We understand from New Urban West that they have some preliminary concepts under review with Ventura County Watershed Protection District as it pertains to flooding and the potential to correct floodway issues out there. And they anticipate submitting a tentative track map towards the end of October for a review. So if they
October
were
this year, in other words,
October
next
of
week?
2018, yes, that's what they've indicated. And they would have to go through the environmental impact report process, which would take typically 6 to 8 months. So we probably wouldn't have any public hearings until the third or fourth quarter of 2019.
Army Corps of Engineers is probably that too, has to have a report. No, they do.
Anything else?
EIR is going to be yay thick.
Anything else?
That's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Morgan, anything tonight?
Mine will be quick because the Eagle Scout was covered. I've done hundreds over 38 years, hundreds of Eagle Scouts, and this kid is the sharpest one. I got to say, I'm sorry, boys out there, but this guy is something else, and he is a salesman. He's not just he's a salesman, because when it came time to do his CPR at the Fiesta, he called me up, and I said, well, we're full, but let me see if I can fit you in. And I did. I fit him in by the Chamber of Commerce. He did 1,000 at the chamber, right there in the Fiesta. CPR is teaching other people. And so he's a sharp kid, and I see him going places. And he got his Eagle at 15 years old. I got to tell you, that's good, to get your Eagle by 15. I encourage all of them to get it early, or you miss out. I was at Life Scout. I didn't quite make it because I was too late. Also, we talked about the airport. Now, the airport, I should give one to every one of you, the flight patterns where you're supposed to be in, your turn patterns. And she saw that they're supposed to be over kind of like Ponderosa, turning in, and out here on the left-hand turn, turning in, close as you can get to Las Posas Road. Sometimes they'll extend. But when she was telling me at first, I didn't understand. I thought, they're coming over you and making their right-hand turn. And she said, no, they're going north. They're going over straight east. And I said, well, they don't go east because I'm down in the middle of town. I don't get those. So they must be cutting over the hills. That means they should have been turning and going further north when they made their turn. And so I think we've gotten some reaction out of it, because I think they talked to the flight controllers. I was there 2 hours. I didn't hear it at all, maybe one plane. And so I think we did some good, and we'll continue to monitor that, make sure that stays the same. Again, Todd's back from his treatment, and I'm glad to see him back. So I was gone 3 days. My daughter opened her store up in Reno, and I got to be part of the I got to cut the ribbon. She begged me to come up there, so I did. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you. All right, so the one meeting I was not able to attend was the Airport Authority. But I was wondering, Mr. Kotzel, if you could maybe give us an update on the paving and how it's going around the city?
Sure. Yeah, the majority of the paving work has been completed. We've had two main efforts going on. Sorry, the mic just shut off. With Slurry Seal, our Slurry Seal project is pretty well wrapped up, other than coming back and taking care of some what we call punch list items, some areas that do need to be repaired. And so the contractor will be addressing those. And then our major paving effort in the Camarillo Corridor project pretty well has been completed with the paving recently, finishing up Carmen Drive and Daly Drive. And they're currently installing traffic signal loop detectors, and then the striping will go in soon after that. So that is pretty well wrapping up our active paving projects right now, and it's been turning out really well overall.
Yeah, I want to commend the staff. I know it was a real all-hands-on-deck effort to do this, but for the most part, very well received. And I know it was a huge endeavor when you have one of your main thoroughfares under, construction for improvement, but nevertheless it is an inconvenience. So I want to thank the staff for all that hard work. I know I had a person talk to me today and said it looks on Daily Drive and others, but it looks really good. So that's always what you want to hear. So anything else from anybody tonight? Yeah, Mr. Tremblay?
Just one quick thing to follow up on Mrs. McDonald's question regarding Camarillo Springs. Mr. Vaca, the submission by New Urban West to Ventura County Watershed Protection District, has there been a response by the Watershed Protection District to that submission yet?
Yes, there has.
And so is it now under review by New Urban West?
It's being updated for resubmittal back to Watershed to address some of the points that they had raised with the applicant.
And so if they're to follow this, if there is a submission by New Urban West later this month, not too much of October left, by Halloween, that will be a matter of public record, correct?
Yes, it would. And we've already indicated to New Urban West that it's going to be deemed incomplete immediately because obviously it would not comply with the existing general plan or zoning, but we also need to have some assurance that their floodway issues can be addressed. So they're aware of that. They indicated they have some time frame requirements that they must achieve in order to keep the project moving forward.
Well, my ulterior motive in asking the question is when are we going to see that report and the response from the Watershed Protection District? Would we see that as part of? Would it be released to us as part of the submission that's going to the city, or are we going to have to wait for many months? I don't know if it's a matter of public record or not. That's why I was curious.
So if I understand right, the submittal that we expect coming up from the developer is what they've indicated is going to include their responses to Watershed's initial, and it was very, very initial review response from Watershed on the main elements of addressing the flooding. There's further details that the developer and their engineers need to work through. And so as far as that submittal of information that would be part of the record, then that would be going into Watershed also for review. And from the city's perspective, we're going to be deferring to Watershed. And then in our recent meeting with the developer and the engineers, the understanding or the realization is that FEMA is the actual ultimate decider on whether or not a CLOMAR, which is a conditional letter of map revision based on revised grading, would be issued. So the submittal and review to FEMA is really the tell-all in the end if it's going to be feasible or not. We will monitor and do our review concurrently along with that, but deferring again to Watershed and FEMA that will ultimately make that determination.
Thanks for that. I mean, that's a very complete answer in context, but my question, my other question remains, and that is, when will we as a council see that report? I'd like to read that
everything's ready.
flood analysis, and I'd like to read the Watershed Protection's response. Okay, I have a client who's in the middle of a LOMAR appeal right now with FEMA, so I'm curious. And I don't know whether or not it's available to us or not.
I don't think we should be getting in the middle of going back and forth between the two agencies until they've got a final report.
I'm not asking. I'm just asking when it's going to be available for review.
Final report.
You know, Council, I'm going to confer with the department heads on this and come up with a schedule for you that you can review in terms of releases and those type of things.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
All right, anybody, did you have another one, Mr. Tremblay? No, that was it? Okay. So, Counselor, do you want to say the magic words about our closed session?
Yes, I can do that. We have a closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. Number of potential cases is 2. And our other closed session is a conference with real property negotiator. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is the former fire station. The agency negotiator are listed in the agenda. The negotiating parties, St. Mary Magdalene School, and under negotiation, price and terms of payment.
Okay, so with that, we will now recess to our study session, which we have 4 items. And if time permits, we will go into closed session as well. So with that said, we're in recess.
Ask the record to reflect that all council members are now present. Mr. Morgan, would you lead us in the pledge?
Everyone please stand. Place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any amendments to this agenda?
No amendments, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to explain to anybody who wondered that I was absent from the first session because I was at a Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency meeting.
I represent not just Camarillo, but all the cities over the Fox Canyon Aquifer. And they were adopting an ordinance, or they were supposed to adopt an ordinance that would set the water allocations. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess it is, the ordinance was completely torn apart and will be rewritten, and we'll have another go at it on November 9th and then again on November 20th. So those meetings do not conflict with this one. That's the good part. Okay. Next is public comments. I'll call the names in the order in which I received them. The first is Tiffany Lewis. As you're coming up, let me explain our procedure. Our procedure is that you have 3 minutes to speak. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. You can see a clock, and I can see a clock. It'll count down. When it gets to 1 minute, a yellow light will come on, and there'll be a tone. Don't be alarmed. You still have a minute to complete your comments. So, and we ask you to just state your name for the record. So.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tiffany Lewis. I'm a resident of Camarillo. And first, actually, I'd like to thank Mr. Norman for dealing with all of my emails the last few weeks. I really appreciate it. I just want to make sure everyone understands that I have been emailing about the clean power quite often in the last few weeks because the council did make the decision to set our default at 36%. And I did review the council meeting on the 24th of September, and I did notice that there was some information that was not provided to our council members. So I felt like it was important to provide them the additional information because I felt like it was unfair to them to have made a decision without the information that was provided. And that information was that if a community does decide to choose the 100% default, that provides the opportunity for our lower income community members, that includes our seniors and others who are on fixed incomes, to participate in the 100% at no additional cost to them. Now, in the last few weeks, many other cities in Ventura County have been hearing this information. They had the benefit of getting that information in one way or another, as our city council members were not able to get that at the day that it was presented to them. And right now, about almost 65% of all communities in Ventura County have now decided a 100% default rate. And that's one, obviously being mindful of the fact that that provides an opportunity for our lower income community members to participate in clean energy at no additional cost to them. And then also being mindful of the fact that our earth is very precious and we don't know how much time we have left. The scientists say not a whole lot, the way that we are managing it. And the clean energy really would help this city, I think, show our leadership and our commitment to our community and to our earth. But yet again, I just wanted to provide that additional information, let everyone know publicly that that information was not provided, to my knowledge, at least publicly during that meeting, that that opportunity is there. So I did want to ask for reconsideration. I know you've already made that decision, but again, with the new information that is out there, I feel like it would be a fair ask. Especially, we have many people in the community who have signed a petition saying we at least want the opportunity for this information to be out there and to be reconsidered. So again, thank you all for listening to my emails, reading them, and again to Mr. Norman, the city manager, for going back and forth with me many, many times. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Todd Schuman.
Greetings. My name is Todd Schuman. I too live in Camarillo. I too request that you reconsider the default tier for renewable energy content in the Clean Power Alliance. Oxnard made a decision last night to go 100%. So did Thousand Oaks. Last week, The county of Ventura also made a decision to extend their 100% tier. It had already been established for commercial. They also extended it to residential. As Ventura City also made a decision last week to go 100% for both commercial and residential. So, last but not least, Moore Park upped their default. They were at 36, much as the way that Camarillo was, and they made a decision last week to go up to 50. As Tiffany said, there's a class issue involved here. If you select 100% default, those people who qualify for CARE and FARA under the Edison program, which depending on the size of the family can go up to about $75,000, they will get 100% renewable energy content in their electricity, yet they will only be paying at the 36% rate. That only happens if you select 100% default. So if you don't select 100% default, you're basically saying to poor people, if you want clean energy, you got to pay 10% more. And I don't think that's fair. That's a class issue. And you have an option here to make a decision that is beneficial to poor people in this county, allow them to be as green as everyone else, and they don't pay any more than anyone else. And that's a really important thing, and we don't, again, I'm following Tiffany's lead, she's looked at the record, it doesn't seem like that was really considered by you when you made the decision September 25th. So that's one issue. I also understand another issue involved the PCIA issue that was before the Public Utilities Commission. And we were fearful, and I talked with Councilman Tremblay about this when we met with him. We were concerned about this, that it would affect things. And indeed, the decision did go against community choice aggregation. But you know that the Clean Power Alliance has said that's not going to affect our rates. They've said that. And they confirmed that again for me when I talked to the Clean Power Alliance person last night. It's not going to affect the rates, even though we lost that decision. So that should not be a reason used to go against selecting a higher default. I got 20 seconds left. The last thing I want to say is I was at the Ventura County Supervisors meeting last week when this issue was addressed. And I just want to let you know, your supervisor, Kelly Long, she supported a 50% default. She didn't have to do that. I actually thought she would go for 36, but she said 50%.
Thank you. Cynthia Glass. For a minute, I thought we had two Cynthia Glasses.
Deterioration, asbestos, and no maintenance, all issues that were caused by Morgan, Craven, and McDonald to the firehouse. Now the value of the land is less, and you wasted the taxpayers' monies. Mr. Morgan, you let the Pleasant Valley Lions cook burgers in front of the firehouse with the garage door open. The members stayed in there during the entire 3-day fiesta times of operation for food. I cleaned out 5 bags of trash and took home signs to clean with a pool brush before the event. Never once did you mention asbestos to us. Why did the city, who owns it, not ask the members of the club, me, or any volunteers who entered the building to sign off? But when St. Mary Magdalene sent in an inspector, he had to sign off as the city being not liable. Mr. Morgan, you have repeatedly demonstrated poor judgment. The fiesta was embezzled not once, but twice, and the first you never recovered the monies. Mr. Morgan, can you explain why the city awarded the fiesta $12,000 in 2015 and now it's up to $25,000? More than doubled in 3 years. So a nonprofit that does not perform audits can receive more monies from the city? Or how about guiding them on how to keep an accounting system? Why is the city holding the students and school administration in a hostage situation with the sale of the firehouse? Did you ask for city control for the Kidstream Museum? No city control for the leasing of the Pleasant Valley building. I'm quite confident the administration and the school, after using the building for their students, will allow the usage for all other parties with agreed rental fees. If the city wants control, then pay your share of the liability and maintenance. With obesity in youth being an issue, the added gym would give the added opportunity to offer some more student sports programs. When the Fiesta had a need for parking space, the school rented it. So they had already proven they would work with the community without a conditional clause of city control. When the final decision is made on the firehouse, some thought should be placed on the 2 murals located on the building and the inner courtyard. I believe the city should salvage them and incorporate them in the new building or historical firehouse marker. That would keep the integrity of the history of the old townhouse. And Mrs. Craven, you made a statement back in 2016 to the Acorn that a witch hunt had occurred with the Fiesta embezzlement. Well, if you feel that citizens like me informed the city, the taxpayers, and the district attorney about the actual truths, you are truly misled. We are truth finders and want our tax monies protected and justice served. Our forefathers and many military personnel fought wars to protect our freedom to voice our opinions to you.
Thank you. Matthew Wayne Lorimer.
You know, I talked about a couple violations from the city council. I talked Jan about not having her literature marked, Kevin his signs, but Jan, you apologize. Thank you. It's nice to see somebody come forward and say they're wrong. In front of you have Mike Morgan, who ran his literature. Mr. Dave Norman, you're the city manager. Is this acceptable for Mr. Morgan to use a city logo on his literature? I have the regular literature here. Also, Mayor Craven, you use it too in the proclamation. If you look at that, that's clearly city document. It should not be used. But again, this is what happens at City Hall. The next thing I want to talk about is the end of bullying. I gave you this information because some of you are bullies to the people in this public. You go around and you're rude, you're disrespectful. This literature you ought to look at, and you ought to have the city attorney sit down with you and go over it. And maybe Dave Norman too. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the fraud policy. Mr. Morgan has used city code enforcement to harass people about signs. This has been going on a long time. I've talked about it. I asked for an investigation. You have a policy. It says, quote, using one's position with the city to gain advantage when conducting personal business with the city. I asked for an investigation. I asked Mr. Pierrick to write a letter, and I also called. He would not return my call. He's a public servant. He would not return my call. I had to go in finally. I talked to Jeffrey, and I said, I need a call. Then we talked on the phone. I said, how did you make your decision? I don't have to answer that. That is not public clarity. It's not ethical, and it doesn't show what the problem is. You know what the problem with the city of Camarillo is? The city's great, the people are great, but the council doesn't live by any ethics. It's really disgraceful. And I want a letter. I deserve a letter. Mr. City Attorney, you work for people. You know what we need in this community? I think it should be elected posts for the city attorney and the city manager. The reason why, there's too much power at City Hall. And Ms. Craven, crime statistics. You know, you mentioned rape. You know something? You know what you said? Well, they knew their victims. That's like blaming people because they got raped. That's disgusting. You said that 5 times. Kevin, you never stepped forward. What about you, Jan, Mike? You think it's acceptable to pass the buck? Somebody gets raped and you blame it on the victim. That's what you said. Well, they knew their attacker. That's not fixing the problem. Why didn't you spend some money and advocate for self-defense classes? Why didn't you put a public service announcement? You know, it's disgraceful. No other city in Ventura County, city councilmen blame rape victims and get away with that nonsense. That's disgusting.
Thank you. Daniel Goldberg.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Daniel Goldberg, and I am a candidate for City Council. Tonight, I'm here to talk about Measure M. The measure is the product of a few select individuals who have a long-term grudge with you all, the incumbents. Yes, the petition received over 5,000 people to sign their petition, but it was still the product of less than a handful. Now this group is trying to restrict the rights of voters, of who voters can elect. This sounds like a threat to the future of Camarillo democracy. Measure M is severely restrictive for the future banishing of city council members. This measure will bring drastic changes to our city development. And if Measure M passes, future elections will be controlled by special interest groups who will have complete control over the candidates and dictate their voting policy. Measure M does not take into account that voters are smart individuals. I think we have some really smart people here in this city. I actually know we do because I've met quite a few during this campaign. Further, Measure M supporters have begun a harassment campaign against me. They have stolen my signs and replaced them with Measure M signs. Sure, it could be a coincidence that my signs are gone and now Measure M signs are in their place, but it's pretty suspicious to me. I feel that politics is about relationships. You build a good rapport and maybe that person will vote for you. If you operate with dirty tactics and try to bully someone to vote for you, that might work with other people, but not for me. That is why I'm voting no on Measure M. The measure is unduly harsh to the people of Camarillo and does not respect their rights to be heard through free and fair elections. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Romero.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jessica Romero, and I, too, am a candidate for Camarillo City Council. I just want to restate a couple of things that have been mentioned earlier. If we choose the 100% default, people have the opportunity to always opt out or down. It also provides our low-income members opportunity at no additional cost. And I truly believe that we need to move forward toward a sustainable future, and we need to lead with vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Santangelo.
Hello. Susan Santangelo, also candidate for City Council. I'm glad I was here earlier today and I really appreciate Mr. Trembley's explanation and sharing the updates for the rates. And I wish that it could be a back and forth because I wish I could raise my hand and ask questions. But my understanding is the concern is that these rates will be going up. And if the rates go up, then the rates affect Edison, the rates will affect Clean Power Alliance. So to me, what really matters is the comparison between the Clean Power Alliance rates and the Edison rates. And towards the end of Mr. Trembley's discussion, what we heard was that at the 36% tier, CPA will be 1.5% lower, but at the 50%, it's parity. It's the same rates. And at the 100%, it will probably be about an 8.5% increase, that's the estimate from today, and that's pretty much in line with what we were told a month or two ago. So it's not really dramatically different. I have to say I was shocked. I thought this was a no-brainer. I thought you were going to go with 50% parity, and so I was really surprised. So again, it's the comparison of the rates. And then the argument that we need to see what's going to happen this year. Well, don't rates have the possibility of changing every year? So does that mean every year we're going to say we should see what happens? I think at some point you need to make a decision and be visionary and look towards a sustainable future. Camarillo is a great place, but Camarillo needs to be a leader in this. Camarillo needs to be a place that other counties and other cities and other communities look to for leadership. Sustainable future is important. The last thing is that I heard a few times mentioned earlier today that people don't even know about this yet. Tell them. Start now. Get it out there. Start teaching people that they can opt into lower choices. I heard a month ago, people don't know about this. Tell them. That's your job. Thank you.
I believe the time to opt in or out is February, is that correct? And so we will be telling them very soon.
Actually, Madam Mayor, this has been Facebooked. It's on our website. We provided a notification on our utility bills to visit our website for information about CPA. We've been out there. If people are missing it, they're just not paying attention.
Well, and we've got more months to find other ways to let them know. Doug McDowell.
Good evening. I am not a candidate for City Council.
And you're not Cynthia Glass.
No, I am not. My name is Doug. I am a Camarillo's resident. And I just wanted to come up and ask if maybe you can address this, maybe you can't, because whether it's on the agenda or not, but maybe some justification as to why you opted for the 36 and not one of the higher tiers. From my research and everything that I've read and the evidence from the other cities, it seems like maybe the 100% is the way to go. And so just I want to ask you guys to just, I don't know, defend your stance.
Mr. Tremblay is the one who talked two of us into going with that, so I'm going to let him tell you.
Well, right, Madam Mayor, and this will constitute my response. I appreciate all of the, I appreciate the speakers very much, and I salute Ms. Lewis and Mr. Schuman, Ms. Santangelo, Ms. Romero, and so on. Is there anybody, and Mr. McDowell? Sorry, did I leave anybody out? Up here on the dais, first of all, we have a responsibility for environmental stewardship. We also concurrently have a responsibility of being fiscally prudent on behalf of the city's residents and ratepayers. And we, unfortunately, the mayor could not be here because she was representing the city in another agency at the 5 o'clock meeting, but I had a pretty extensive commentary on where we are today relative to CPA. And the bottom line, I think you have to look at this from two different levels. One is you look at the CPA rates, that's okay, CPA rates juxtaposed against the Southern California Edison rates. So it's a rate-to-rate analysis. You also have to look at it in terms of being fiscally prudent, in my opinion, the overall increase in rates that is expected to occur. And as of this morning, well, 48 hours ago, Edison filed a new filing, which, among other things, indicated that they made a $200 million error in the prior rate calculator for the PCIA charge that was submitted to the PUC. That's the exit charge. The bottom line is that, and these are only forecasts, and the numbers can change at any time, but for 2019, there will be somewhere between, it's estimated, for both CPA customers and SCE customers, there will be a 10 to 15% increase in power generation costs. And that's attributable to market factors, et cetera. That's my understanding. That translates to somewhere between, according to CPA, somewhere between a 5% to a 7.5% increase to a customer's overall electricity bill relative to the SCE base rate. If you add the 100% on top of that, the increase is going to be somewhere between, as I understand it, somewhere between 12% or even 14% up to 17% in a bill. So from a fiscal prudence standpoint, it seemed to me that it would be best to wait for the year because CPA is a brand new endeavor. Its reserves are very limited, and so from a financial standpoint, it appears to me to be prudent to wait. It still is, and we have all kinds of benefits from having joined the CPA, 36% instead of the 34%. I won't repeat all those, but depending on how the transition goes, we also want people to stay in CPA. We don't want them to opt out, and they have the ability to move up if they wish to do so. I appreciate Mr. Schuman's remark relative to class, but my response to you is that all seniors are not necessarily going to qualify for the CARE program. What happens if you have a fixed income senior who is not able to qualify for that program? And they are they all of a sudden have a 14 to 17% rate increase. We would get all, and I already have received some pushback on that from those people who are aware that we're transitioning, and Ms. Santangelo is absolutely correct. We are transitioning. You know, we are pushing this information as fast as we can out the door, but there are still a lot of people who aren't aware of it yet. So to put it at 100% premium, and we discussed this at length, Madam Mayor, at the 5% session,
Right.
didn't seem to me to be prudent. It seemed prudent to me to stay with this default tier and then reassess for next year. We've put an awful lot of time in on this, and all the members of the council have, and I know I certainly have, but it seemed to be the most fiscally prudent because we have to balance our responsibilities for environmental stewardship, which I take very seriously, together with our responsibility to our citizens. So thank you for letting me make
Thank you.
a brief response.
Okay, next on the agenda is a public hearing. Oh,
He's speaking again.
I'm sorry, I hadn't received this yet. Libby, is it Higgin?
It is. Higgins.
Higgin, okay.
Yes, hello, my name is Libby Higgins, and I also am here to support the 100%. While I appreciate the desire for balance, I think that one of the things that I find pretty important when it comes to deliberation is having those different perspectives at the table. And right now what I'm hearing is that Councilmember Tremblay convinced two people on the table, and yet none of you came to the table pushing for the 100%. So that is not a true deliberation if really there is no advocate on the council who's really trying to push for that option. And when it comes to, I felt a little bit like it was going both ways. Either you're getting the word out and letting everybody know what they can do and the different options they can have, and then, if that's the case, then truly everyone can opt out. Those seniors that can't afford or don't fit into that lower income bracket can opt out because you're doing a great job getting the word out on how to do that. Or you're not doing a great job on how to do that, and you're choosing the lowest rate because that's the safe thing to do in an election year because nobody likes to see their bills go up. Or maybe you're not really doing a great job getting the word out there. Or just like you said, I do completely understand the idea that people aren't paying attention or this might be on their radar. Let's face it, life gets in the way. But in reality, if somebody's bill affects them and they learn about the option to opt out, we're still able to include and be inclusive for all of those that can't afford it if we don't choose the 100% rate. I'm really having a problem here with the lack of deliberation and every option coming to the table and really only letting one or two voices steer everybody which way to go. And I honestly say I would really have liked to had, somebody here who was not just deliberating on the city council, but somebody who was really pushing for that option so that all of you would have a chance to hear that voice too. Instead, we're really just hearing that, there's some of you that consider this a major priority and some of you that see what how it can affect people at 36% and let's give it a go. I understand that completely. Especially in a new program. But I also don't think that this city council has some sort of magical knowledge that most of Ventura County doesn't have. I don't think that most of Ventura County would have opted in to the 100% had there been a bunch of red flags. So I just wanted to say I really do hope you reconsider this. I really hope there's real deliberation had on this topic because I think that the 100% can be a real benefit to our community, not just the residents, but our reputation as leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I seem to remember there was a robust discussion here on the dais the very night the DTR was discussed and voted upon. And I don't remember Mr. Schuman or you, Libby, or others who are now very passionate about this very issue being here at that meeting.
I remember Mr. Schuman.
Was Mr. Schuman here? He was not
here that night. You were here another night.
No.
Oh, okay.
They're here for the meeting.
I have two kids. I cannot make it to every meeting, but I do watch them.
Okay. Okay, you've had your time.
Can we ask for clarification? When is the deadline
To opt in and opt out?
to change the
Oh.
The deadline is October 31st.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing, a resolution approving a one-year time extension for a tentative tract map 5969 Camarillo Village Homes LLC. It's a public hearing that was continued from October 10th. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. Michelle Gluckert-Deanna will be presenting this item.
Good evening, Mayor Craven and members of the City Council. The subject property is located northeast of the intersection of Lewis Road and Pleasant Valley Road. On August 24th, 2016, the City Council approved tentative tract 5969 in conjunction with Residential Plan Development, RPD 196, and Conditional Use Permit CUP 369. Tentative Tract 5969 was approved for a subdivision of a 23-acre site into two parcels, Lots 1 and 2, and further subdivision of Lot 1 into 285 for-sale airspace condominium units. RPD 196 was approved on Lot 1 for 285 for-sale townhomes. CUP 369 was approved on Lot 2 for a mixed-use building consisting of 24 rental apartments over 12,000 square feet of commercial. Camarillo Village Homes is requesting a one-year time extension for the tentative map. No changes to the tentative map or to the conditions of approval are proposed, and therefore no new significant environmental impacts exist that were not previously analyzed under the EIR that was certified for this project. At the public hearing of October 10th, staff presented a letter from Martin Teitelbaum, which was received on October 10th, citing concerns about the time extension request. Your council directed staff to meet with the property owner, Camarillo Village Homes, and Mr. Teitelbaum to address the items raised in his letter, and you continued the public hearing until today, October 24th. On October 11th, the city formally notified the property owner about the need to maintain the property. On October 15th, staff met with both parties to address the items that were raised in Mr. Teitelbaum's letter. An agreement was reached, and the property owner has promised to maintain his property and has shown good faith in abating the weeds. One condition has been added to the draft resolution that Camarillo Village Homes will maintain the property on a regularly scheduled basis. They have agreed to this condition, and Mr. Teitelbaum has stated that with the implementation of this condition, his concerns that were raised in his letter have been addressed. And therefore, staff recommends that your council adopt a resolution approving a one-year time extension from August 24th, 2018 to August 24th, 2019 for tentative tract map 5969, subject to all previously approved conditions of approval and subject to a condition that Camarillo Village Homes will maintain the property on a regularly scheduled basis. This concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Mr.
So basically what we're talking about here is 10-month extension. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the extension is for that time only.
Yes.
And is there any new conditions or anything that have been put forward on this?
The only new condition is that Camarillo Village Homes will maintain the property on a regularly scheduled basis. All the other conditions remain as is.
Maintaining it, can you get a little bit in the details of what maintaining that property means?
I can.
Thank you.
It's on the agenda report, big page stamp number 4. And it's in
Page 4, Joe?
Yes. It's in the resolution section 4. And it reads approval of a one-year time extension for TT 5969. The City Council approves the time extension from August 24th, 2018 to August 24th, 2019 for tentative tract 5969 based on the above findings and subject to all previously approved conditions of approval and subject to a condition that Camarillo Village Homes LLC will maintain the property on a regularly scheduled basis in good condition and in accordance with all city codes, including regular vegetation removal to avoid potential pest infestations. And this specific language was discussed in our meeting with the adjacent property owner, Mr. Martin Teitelbaum, and the applicant representative, Mr. Brandon Mann, who's here this evening, and everyone agreed and concurred that this is satisfactory.
Can I proceed?
Certainly.
Yeah, Joe, if in fact it was determined that there was some issues with the property vis-a-vis the insect invasion, was there any situations where the applicant by law was required to mitigate those circumstances, or was it that they really didn't know what was going on and they just didn't really address it?
I think initially when this occurred, no one had a good understanding of where the insect infestation was coming from. And once we realized that it was due to vegetation on the vacant Camarillo Village Homes property, they did go out and address the vegetation, and that removed the infestation issue.
Okay. So it is in your professional opinion that both sides, especially the applicant, understands that there's a potential issue and they are willing to mitigate whatever that issue would entail for them to mitigate?
Yes, and like I said, the applicant's present, and you could ask them the same if you'd like.
Okay, that's all I have.
Are there any other questions of staff? Jan?
I guess following along those lines, before had it ever reached the point that we should have, on a code enforcement standpoint, addressed the weeds or whatever created the homes for all these critters or bugs or?
We did use our code enforcement staff and procedures to address this previously, and moving forward, we have a commitment that there'll be monthly maintenance occurring to avoid any potential issues in the future.
So were they cited and didn't respond, or did we not cite them?
A notice of violation was issued, and then they did respond.
After it was issued?
Correct.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, thank you.
Oh, let me get that to you, sorry.
So I get for missing the first session. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing, ask if there's anyone who'd like to speak to us on this.
But if you have any questions, I'm available to answer. Per Michelle's information, the remediation was taken care of. If you go out to the property today, it should pass inspection. It's 95% done. There's just a little bit of handwork left to do. And to Jan, to your question before, within about 24 hours of being cited each time, we already contracted somebody to go out and take care of it. So, and you know, per Joe and our conversation with Martin Teitelbaum, I'll be checking up on the property, you know, bi-monthly and at least once a month. We'll make sure that there's nothing that could lead to this again.
And for the record, your name is?
Very fruitful ground.
And for the record, your name is?
Brandon Mann.
Thank you. Any question?
Just one. Brandon, you do intend to push forward with this project next 10 months, right? 11 months, whatever. You intend to push forward with this and making progress?
Yes, that's our intent.
Any other question? Okay, thank you. Oh.
So can you expand a little bit on that, Brandon, that you expect to push forward, but can you expand a little bit on that?
We currently have working with a potential buyer for us on the property, and we're currently looking to put forward plans to move forward, but I can't speak too much to what that's going to be. We're working with the city right now to figure out the best path forward.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, I see somebody in the back.
Daniel.
Please, yes, I was going to say, state your name again for the record, please.
Daniel Goldberg, and this kind of goes into line with I've been speaking about what voters have been telling me, that they really don't want to see any more new housing, and to say we're going to keep building when the buildings behind it and the 3M area still continue to frame. And so I'd like to say that the City Council continues to show that they're out of step with what the residents of Camarillo really want. And I think that's why there's so many people running, because they want to see a new voice up on the dais representing and speaking for the people. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to the council.
Can I ask a
Yes, please.
Yes. Maybe the city manager or the city attorney, as much as you can you maybe shed a little light about the legality of what we are potentially doing here vis-a-vis the law? Is there anything that you can add to as far as a legal interpretation to
yes,
the extent that you can?
Yes, I can. So we have a municipal code. It is section 1810-160. It's entitled Extensions of Tentative Subdivision Maps, and it goes through the various process that is involved with applications for an extension. It provides further that the Director of Planning and Community Development is to review the request, and they submit the application to the council for action. There can be no more than 3 extensions. This is the first one. Excuse me. And the period of each extension may not exceed 12 months. Further, in subsection D, that as a condition of the extension, the council may recommend the new conditions that would relate only to the extension, provided that the developer agrees to these conditions or revisions. And I believe you heard from Mr. Mann this evening that there was a new condition that was added in response to the correspondence from Mr. Teitelbaum, and that the developer and Mr. Teitelbaum have agreed to that new condition. So there is the legal authority for the approval of the extension is set forth in that municipal code section that I just summarized.
Answer your question, Mr.
Yeah, that's good.
Lee? Okay, any other questions of staff?
Okay.
I'll leave it up to the council.
Who wants to start?
Mr. Kildee, you want to
I'll
start?
jump in. I voted against this project. I want that to be crystal clear. I don't think it was a usage of that property that I was in favor of. I do think that industrial is something in the city for a plethora of reasons that we need to make sure that we keep what we have and perhaps hopefully add some more so we can increase our job base here. That's why I was on the record of not voting for this project. It's been, I believe, is it 2 years now? Are we in, how long have we been? Is it 18 months since we approved this? Do you know, Jeff? It's been about 18 months since we approved this. I am concerned about the precedents that the city has here, that we do typically allow an extension on most, if not all of them. Matter of fact, I can't think of any project, quite frankly, that we haven't, but it is up to a certain extent to the council's discretion on this. So it is somewhat, I'm very much consistent with what we've done. I am concerned that, and the reason why I asked the legal question here is that there could be some legal questions that we're going to have to deal with up here with that. But I am not in favor of this project. I understand that it's 10 months, and it's that goes by really quick here. And I'm still considering exactly what I'm going to do here. But I do feel that it's important that we are consistent with what our practices are up here. So I'm going to withhold. I might come back with some more comments after the others have commented on this, but those are my concerns, and I will withhold exactly my total feelings in this for just a little bit longer.
Mr. Morgan?
I'll let Jan speak this time first. She always goes after me.
Mrs. McDonald?
That was a silly statement. Well, I too voted no for this project. I don't think it's an appropriate use of that property as well. And while Mr. Kildee mentioned there is precedent in the past of what has happened, I have been very consistent in what I have done up here. And when I don't agree with a project, I don't agree with the project. And I know that I have voted no on extensions on projects that I didn't think were appropriate in the first place. So I would have a hard time voting to extend a project on something that I didn't think was appropriate in the first place. So I will be a no vote on this. We'll say for consistency's sake. And I just don't think it's the best interest of the city for this project. So, Mr. Morgan, my answer would be no.
Could I make a comment?
Well, let's hear from others.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes. Again, like the attorney has told us, this is a routine matter. It's not something that's outstanding that it can be changed. It's a routine matter, and we're talking about legality too, in the legal realm. If we were going to change this or try to do something not to turn it down, we would face some severe potential legal problems. So as much as you might not like what happened tonight, it's just a routine continuance, extension. And they could do it 2 more times. But main thing is, I know what you were against, But I was also against more industrial. Industrial built there would create jobs, would create traffic. And you need houses to accommodate more people coming here to do industrial. Where are we going to get the houses? We're already slowed those down. That's almost finished. Plus, our university needs housing badly. When it has 7,000 now, it'll have 15,000 in the future. That's a perfect spot for that kind of housing because you'll have a shuttle that's going to stop right there, and you'll have the students don't even have to have a car because then they can go down to the train station, take our other free shuttle to shop and have fun. But that would be a perfect place to put that kind of community rather than more industrial. We've got a lot of industrial. And like I say again, you create jobs, you create traffic. You create a need for housing badly. And so I thought that this would help accommodate our needs of the future for not just the city, but also for the university.
Mr. Tremblay.
Well, I'd like to wait. I'd like to wait to hear what Madam Mayor has to say, and perhaps Mr. Kildee may have some more thoughts.
Would you like me to start, or would you like to?
Okay, I'll let Mrs. McDonald ask.
I just have a question, I think, just to clarify from staff. Is this project, as it has been approved, for sale or rental units?
The 285 condominium townhomes are for sale, and then there's 24 rental apartments above.
24 apartments above the commercial.
And
yes.
how many for sale?
285.
And do we have any idea what the price range? Probably not at this point in time. What the?
No, but other townhomes in the community go between 450 and 550 on average.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
No.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Morgan.
You got, okay, I'm asking a question.
Mr. Kildee, you asked to be next.
That's wrong.
Well, I do think that it's important here to be consistent with what your beliefs are, and my belief is that it was an inappropriate usage of that property, so I will be voting no on this.
Well, I voted for it to begin with. This was not my ideal of what would have been here. I'll tell you that to begin with. I have always thought that corner would be the perfect place in the city of Camarillo to have a private dormitory. It's the closest to the university. It's on a route for the bus. If a bike path, it would be, ever goes along the creek, it would be accessible from there. I've just always told everybody that's what I thought would be best there. This is housing. I believe the apartments, I know Mrs. McDonald was adamant during the first public hearing on this that university students were not going to live there, but I don't believe a property owner can specify who's going to live there and who isn't, especially if you look at rental law. But I will support this. It's a continuation of what we, as a council, approved 2 years ago, maybe a little bit less than 2 years ago. But I will support it. Mr. Tremblay.
Well, thank you all for providing me with your views on this. I was not on the council at the time this tentative track map was approved, so this is the first time around. I do not favor this project. Had I been on the council in 2016, I would not have supported it. And I want to be very clear about that. That said, given that this is a tentative tract map extension, and there are certain things that come into play on this, the developer has addressed the issues with the adjacent landowner, Mr. Teitelbaum, and the resolution provides in Section 4 for the maintenance, and that has been agreed to, as it must, by the developer together with the adjacent landowner. I will vote for this, but very reluctantly.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move the extension.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. You move to
the extension of this track map.
Is there a second?
I'll look to you for the second.
I'll second it. Please vote. Motion carries 3-2 with Mrs. McDonald and Mr. Kildee dissenting. Next is a departmental item, 2018 water conservation status. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Craven. I'd like to start out with highlighting several things that the city has actively pursued and completed along the lines of water conservation. And as you all and most of the community hopefully is aware, the city has long promoted water conservation, and well before the severe drought conditions of recent years, the city has used low water use landscaping and high efficiency irrigation systems for city maintained landscape areas. In addition, the city has also implemented a recycled water system which delivers 2.5 million gallons each day of high quality recycled water, which is used to irrigate crops, landscaping, and athletic fields instead of using potable water. In response to severe statewide drought conditions from 2012 to 2014, California Governor Brown signed several executive orders in 2014 and 2015 mandating the reduction of water use and implementing permanent water conservation measures. One of these measures is the prohibition of irrigating turf grass in public street medians with potable water. The city has achieved full compliance with this restriction by replacing the turf in the Carmen Drive median, and we also included some replacement of turf in areas around City Hall, replacing that with very low water use plants and drip irrigation systems. The new landscaping that has been recently installed now uses 2/3 less water than it used to, saving 1 million gallons of water each year. The multi-year drought conditions and requirements to reduce water use have raised concerns with how the city could continue to permit new housing construction and meet the additional demand for water. In 2015, the City Council revised the Water Conservation Ordinance to include requirements that any new development within the city's water service area must offset any additional water demand. Developments that received entitlements before the end of 2015 were given the option to pay the city a water demand credit amount prior to the end of 2017, which would be used by the city to implement permanent water conservation measures to reduce water use in an amount equal to the new demand of the development. To date, the city has received just over $3 million in water demand credit payments, which is being used to implement toilet and landscape irrigation retrofit programs, which has resulted in the offset of 100 acre-feet per year of water demand to date. Based on that reduction, approximately 40 million gallons of water have been conserved since the inception of the water demand credit program, and an additional 144 acre-feet, or 47 million gallons each year, in water demand offset is expected upon exhaustion of those water demand credit funds that have been deposited. The land development projects that receive entitlements after 2015 are required to implement permanent water conservation measures within the city's water service area to completely offset the water demand added by their development. With these requirements in place, land development projects are not creating an impact on the ability of the city to serve water to its existing customers. The governor's executive orders ultimately set a statewide goal in 2015 for everybody to use 25% less water than was used in 2013. The state further set a target for reduction in water use specific to Camarillo water customers at 20% reduction over the amount used in 2013. To comply with all these new restrictions, the City Council declared a Stage 2 water supply condition in June of 2014 and then redeclared it in November of 2015 when the city's water conservation ordinance was revised, as I just described, to address the water demand from new development. After the winter rains of 2015 and 2016 wintertime, which predominantly fell in the northern California region, however, that rainfall brought reservoir storage levels back to replenish state, and the governor replaced the statewide water use reduction mandate with guidelines for water purveyors to set their own water use reduction parameters based on projections of their water supplies, assuming 3 subsequent years of lower than average rainfall. In July of 2016, Council reacted by adjusting the city's Stage 2 water supply condition to the current Stage 1 water supply condition that we are in right now, recognizing the increase in statewide water supplies while maintaining baseline water conservation measures. I do have a little bit more information to provide in that I feel it is pertinent and applicable to this update, so I hope the Council will bear with me with this additional information.
This is important stuff.
Mm-hmm. The city's Stage 1 water supply condition includes a water use reduction goal of 10%. along with other conservation measures, a few of which are landscape watering is limited to 4 days per week and only between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 a.m. No watering during or immediately after measurable rainfall. No use of water for washing off hard or paved surfaces. Water leaks must be fixed within 72 hours of receiving notice from the city. Self-closing shut-off nozzles are required for washing of vehicles, and drinking water is only served in restaurants upon request. Staff continues to implement the city's water conservation ordinance under the Stage 1 water supply condition with inspections, enforcement, and customer assistance with landscape irrigation surveys and adjustments, as well as providing free water-saving devices such as shower heads, faucet aerators, automatic shutoff nozzles, and shower timers. These items are available to city water customers for free here at City Hall. The city's ongoing water conservation efforts have resulted in the total water demand remaining below 2013 levels, with reductions in water use of 21.7% in 2016 and 19.4% in 2017. Staff continues to explore additional water conservation opportunities, including the possibility of providing buckets to water customers for the collection and use of water that would otherwise go down the drain. For new information on the water conservation front, there have been 2 new pieces of legislation that became effective in May of this year. They are long-term water use efficiency and conservation bills, SB 606 and AB 1668, and they are the direct outcome of the Governor's Executive Order B 37-16, which is entitled Making Water Conservation a California Way of Life. This legislation provides the framework for the State Water Resources Control Board to set permanent indoor and outdoor water use objectives, or targets, for water agencies that serve more than 3,000 people, of which Camarillo is one. The residential indoor water use target, so indoor water use, is initially set at 55 gallons per person per day, with an intermediate target of 52.5 gallons per person per day by 2025, and further reducing the long-term target set at 50 gallons per person per day to be achieved by 2030. The residential indoor water use target will be combined with the state's yet-to-be-determined targets for outdoor water use, as well as commercial, industrial, and institutional water use, resulting in an aggregate total of annual urban water use objective for the city, which must be met by 2024. Significant efforts are ongoing, and over the next several years will be required by the state to develop and set the various water use targets and aggregate total water use objectives for the large number of water agencies throughout the state. This is a significant effort that, again, is ongoing, and the results are yet to be determined. The city will be required to report actual water use and document water conservation efforts on a regular basis. The legislation also establishes the ability for the state to impose fines started in 2027, which could range from $1,000 to $10,000 per day for water agencies that do not meet the long-term standards set for efficient water use. For where we are today, in 2018, the total combined water use by all city customers, so that's all residential, commercial, industrial, at averages 90 gallons per day per person. Depending on the city's ultimate aggregate total urban water use objective, which is still to be determined by the state, additional water conservation strategies may be required. A major effort by the city to sustain a reliable supply of water into the future is construction of the long-awaited groundwater desalter, which is on schedule to begin early next year. The desalter will produce roughly half of the amount of water used by city water customers, greatly minimizing the city's reliance on costly imported water from Northern California. Additionally, planning and design efforts for the expansion and enhancement of the city's recycled water storage and delivery capabilities are ongoing. All this providing additional recycled water to offset the amount of potable water needed to supply city customers. That wraps up a summary of the current water conservation status and the many continuing efforts by the city to responsibly manage our precious resource of water.
Any questions?
Just
Mr.
one.
Morgan?
I want to make sure I heard this correct, because I don't think the reporter's here when you said it. We're below what we're using water-wise. We're below what we were using in 2013.
That's correct.
So we have done major water conservation since that time. Not many cities can match that. Say 2013, you're below that. And with the stuff we've had in our cities, I think we've done a great accomplishment. Staff's done a good job.
Question.
Mr. Kilty?
Yeah, Dave, we did have a low-flow toilet program. Do we have some of those left?
Yes, that is continuing. We have information on our website, and that opportunity is still available.
Who do they
Are there any other opportunities available on our website?
Yes, we also have it's essentially a landscape irrigation audit that our consultant will do for any water customer to take a look at their landscape irrigation usage and offering high efficiency sprinkler timers and spray nozzles, and also replacing irrigation with drip irrigation. So that opportunity is available also.
So it's kind of thought a little bit in the water world that the conservation abilities for inside the home are somewhat maximized. So really what potentially the conservation measures would be more acute on the outside of a home rather than inside. Is that pretty much accurate? I mean, let's say the homeowner has, or whatever the owner, the individual has a low-flow toilet. They've got low-flow shower heads there. They've got efficient appliances. So they've pretty much done a lot for efficiencies inside. Is that
right?
Fair?
So for somebody that has done that inside, which again, we don't necessarily have statistics on what the percentage of residents of Camarillo have or have not done that, but for somebody that has done that, then the other effective area to conserve water is in the outdoor irrigation also.
Because I don't know if there was ever any thought, and I don't mean to get off too much here, but because people have asked me about this, about how they can apparently there's a continuous hot water that they can get installed in their house now, and whether or not there's any thought with the city to see if we could somehow mitigate some of those costs. Now, maybe that's a future discussion. I understand that, but are they effective? Do they save water that way? Is it, somewhat worthwhile to at least consider that?
I mean, anecdotally, what I've heard is that they are effective in reducing the amount of warm-up time, if you will, for especially showers or even at the kitchen sink. So the water recirculation system, the hot water recirculation, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is current code requirement for any new construction to have that installed.
Either that or individual water heaters at each.
Correct. Point of source.
Point of source. Yeah.
Also, right. So these are all items that, as we enter into this new realm of water use targets that are being set, and it's already, causing all water purveyors to look at these different opportunities that we are going to need to explore, most likely, to further reduce water use.
Mr. Kilty, let me address that just a little bit differently. It was quite a few years ago that we added that into our house, and it significantly reduced the amount of water for the warm-up period in the back of the house. But it didn't cost that much. We have our house, as many houses of slabs, had water underneath. The water pipes went underneath. So from the farthest point, the plumber just took a pipe up and across and down to connect to the water heater, and the pump is right there by the water heater. So it was just a few pipes. I mean, it's not a significant change if you have that.
Thank you.
Question? Yes.
So if you're looking at numbers, right now you're telling us that our average city customer uses 90 gallons per day per person for indoor and outdoor. And the goal right now, indoor-wise, is 55, which means each person would have 35 gallons to use outside? Am I simplifying that too much?
Right.
So if you have 6 people in your house, you each get that? You each can use, because they haven't set their outdoor yet.
Correct.
So on top of that 55, they're going to add something, but we don't know what that is.
Correct. Right.
So it's somewhere between our 90 and the 55, we'll have to come up with what we have left over to use outdoors is kind of what that's telling us.
Essentially, right. And that 90 gallons per day that's really, I mean, that combines everything: commercial use, industrial use, residential use, indoor, outdoor. Basically, that's our total meter reads
Schools
divided
and
by
everything.
the population served by our water service area. Right.
How do some of these numbers that we are giving per household translate into our units, our HCFs? 100 cubic feet. Because we can tell people you can use so many gallons, but their water bill doesn't talk in gallons. It talks in HCFs.
Right.
Maybe that's something we should change so people understand their bills better.
So one HCF is what, 750 gallons?
Right, 100 cubic feet, 7.48 gallons in a cubic feet, so 748.
Yeah.
Right. Gallons, right. So that'd be, what, 14 HCF?
That's what our average customer uses, right? Isn't it based on
Right.
14 being the average?
Right.
But and if I might, depending upon how the state comes down with their measurement, I really think we need to look at how we relate that to the customer so that they can measure it against the state rather than us having one measurement and them having another.
Absolutely.
Very good. Good report.
Mr. Tremblay.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mr. Consul. I want to focus on big page 1 on recycled water for a minute. What you indicated in the first paragraph of the staff report was that the goal is for delivery of 2.5 MGD of recycled water, and the city is not delivering that much at this point, correct?
On average, that is what we deliver.
Well, but there's also a reference at the bottom of page 3 for planning and referencing planning and design efforts for expansion and enhancement of storage and delivery capabilities. So can you talk about that a little bit in light of the 2.5 MGD goal?
So, well, like the 2.5 million gallons again is the realized average of what we deliver now, out of our roughly 3.5 million gallons a day of effluent from our treatment plant. So, we're looking at there's roughly 1 million gallons yet that could be used for recycled water, and we're studying the possibility of a storage reservoir that could help us meet additional demands. The use of recycled water, especially on the crops, is highly variable, depending on the crop, depending on the location, the soil type, depending on the time of year, obviously, depending on the level of rainfall. So right now, it's actually a pretty tightly allocated or system that we use to allocate the amount of recycled water that goes to each different customer at the different times that is needed. So based on the numbers that we're seeing now, there is a need to deliver additional recycled water. These customers would be able to take that additional recycled water if we could have more flexibility in the delivery of that, and a storage reservoir would provide that. So we're embarking on a conceptual design and verifying those calculations to make sure it pencils out on a cost-effective basis to add in a storage reservoir for recycled water. We've recently completed our diversion pipeline that extends out to Lewis Road with the opportunity to hook up additional recycled water users there. In addition to the possibility that we're moving forward with that Camarillo Water District would most likely be able to take any remaining recycled water that we would have available, with a goal of which we're under a time schedule order to get out of the discharge to the creek. So those are, I just kind of quickly summarize the fact that we're looking at expanding the amount of use of recycled water without discharging it to the creek.
Right. So the bottom line is we're currently delivering about 2.5 million per day. We can get up to about 3. We have the capability of going up to 3.5 million per day. Is the reason for the storage is more of a flow demand equation more than anything else?
That's right.
Okay. Second thing is on the top of page 2, there is a statement about the city having received $3 million in water demand credit payments, and that's resulted in the offset of about 100 acre feet per year. Sorry, I was going to lapse and say AFY per year demand to date. Right. What has been the new demand? In other words, you're juxtaposing this against new demand.
Right. So yeah,
is it more? Yeah, I guess. Let me rephrase it. Is it more or less than 100 AFY?
The actual new demand is more. And actually, as far as what's really the current demand out there through the pipes, it's not quite there yet because the new construction that paid into this program hasn't built out and been fully occupied. The thinking being that more than likely when they do fully occupy and that demand is there at the end of the pipe, that our demand reduction measures would be in place, reducing that same demand of the new construction. So in real rough, I have to get into the details and take a look at each project, but just real roughly in the numbers we presented here is that 100 acre feet demand that we've already offset, and then with another 144 acre feet to go based on what the other projects paid into to offset their demand. So we were looking at a total to roughly 244 acre feet of demand that would ultimately be offset. And we are seeing with the implementation of our toilet retrofit, the landscaping retrofits, there's some time lag in when we see the full reduction of demand, especially over a year's time. But what we have measured so far is the implementation of those water saving measures is reducing the demand as expected.
Okay. And then next question is, and it goes to something Mr. Morgan asked earlier, I just want to confirm, on page 3, it indicates total water demand remaining below 2013 levels with a reduction in water use of 21.7% in 2016 and 19.4% in 2017. Both of those percentages are compared to 2013 as a base, as our baseline, correct? Because we're essentially using 2013 as our baseline.
That's correct.
So each and every year on a go-forward basis, at least the way the State Board has it structured, State Water Board has it structured right now, we're looking at 2013 as our baseline.
Correct.
Okay, that answers my questions.
Any other questions? Mrs. McDonald?
I had originally thought of what is our baseline, but they're not going to do it based on your baseline. They're just going to give every house an allocation, right, or every resident? Is that the way I'm reading it?
Correct.
So our baseline wouldn't come into play.
Right.
But our baseline has been, I agree, our baseline has been important up until now.
Oh, okay.
Relative to how municipalities have performed. But when the State Board moves, if I understand it correctly, when the State Board moves forward with the regulations on the number of gallons per person, it'll be based, that will be the criteria. But that 90 gallons, that was a, when it says in 2018, the combined indoor, outdoor, residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional water use by city customers averages 90 gallons per day per person.
Would have been 25% more.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I don't think you're going from 90 to 55. I think that's apples to oranges, right? Because that's a combined.
This one's combined. The 90 is combined.
55.
The 90 is combined. It's M&I and ag and everything else, right?
I had that number in there just to give a little bit of feel for where are we today. We can't specifically answer that compared to what the state's going to come down with indoor and outdoor, but on average, our per person per day usage is 90 gallons per day.
Right, but I don't know that to say, I don't want people to say we've got to go from, I don't think it's accurate to say we've got to go from 90 to 55.
Right.
In other words, I don't think it'll be going the numerator, the denominator may be okay, but the numerator is a little off.
Correct.
But when you brought up the baseline, my first thought was, and it's happened to us on other things, we do a really good job, then they set that as our baseline, where everybody else hasn't been, so their baseline's a lot,
Yeah, it's a moving target.
Yeah, where you do well and then you get punished for it, but it won't affect this new program.
Well, but up until the State Board, is it correct to think, though, up until the State Water Board adopts and then implements these regulations, the state is still going to look at that 2013 baseline as a number, sort of lodestar to go by.
But we're not under any mandate at the moment.
Not right now, but who knows?
Well, you are from Fox Canyon.
Right, but we could be 2 years from now, and prior to the implementation of new regs from the State Board.
So you never know what the state.
The only thing that doesn't have a mandate for a reduction is state water.
Correct.
You can't
pumping's a whole other thing. Yeah.
But that's half our water.
But that's not baselined on the 13 usage number anyway.
It's baseline on a 10-year period that includes that.
Obviously, if it's 10 years, I'll include 2015. Never mind.
No.
So
Good report.
just real quickly here, maybe you can, anybody. So where are we on this? Are we just, we're doing well, but we're going to continue monitoring this and
Correct.
come back with
No, and again, the city, as I stressed at the beginning, even before the severe reductions due to the drought, the city had already been conserving quite a bit, which then essentially kind of penalized us on our 2013 goal because we had already kept our usage quite low, and then we had to reduce further on top of that. So we're continuing to do well, and it's just we need to wait and see what the state comes up with. All the water agencies are monitoring this, paying very close attention to what it's really going to mean for us as water purveyors and for our customers.
It's somewhat akin to our recycling, isn't it?
Remember that? Yeah, we were doing really well, and then we got...
Mr. Morgan.
I'm not going to go back at, I shouldn't say I'm not going to. I hate to repeat this again, but I'll be caught up because I was the one chased after that guy to get that reservoir and said you guys would be chasing for the grants. That reservoir, the application for the grant for the reservoir, where are we?
So we are moving into selecting the consultant to do the preliminary design for the reservoir. So, and we've been in touch with the different state agencies and the grant opportunities, and similar to our federal grant for the desalter, which we haven't heard about yet, but we needed a feasibility study in place for that to be successful. We need a preliminary design, essentially a feasibility design in support of our recycled water storage reservoir to be successful for any grant application.
What's your time frame?
So first step is to complete this preliminary design effort more than likely by the middle of next year to be in the position to look at any grant opportunities.
Great.
Okay, is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second? Motion is second. Anybody against it? So ordered. I understand that all of you did your new business oral communications earlier. I will fill in mine now. I attended a ribbon cutting and I attended the Habitat for Humanity Hearts and Hammers dinner fundraiser. Paid for the ticket. I attended 2 Fox Canyon meetings, and I want to tell you a little bit about the one today. I'm going to make the rest of my report first. If any of this duplicates what anybody else said or asked for, please tell me. I also attended a housing conference last week on Thursday, and I attended an investment committee meeting. Just for the heck of it, I'll tell you that Trevor and I went to see Pompeii at the Reagan Library, and it's a tremendous display, and if you have a chance, or make the chance to go. I also want to tell you that, and here's where we get into if it was duplicative, please tell me. Large article in the LA Times last Sunday about our good friends Crowds on Demand and how they are going out and visiting and how they're actually people have been taking polls of their impact. And so I'm going to ask the city clerk to please get that out to all of you. Also, I noted in today's paper that Marilyn Norda passed away. She, I think, is noteworthy for the city that she herself organized the Make a Difference days that we had. And those were days when she got all kinds of materials donated. It was a tremendous effort. She lined up volunteers from churches. She was a pastor at one of the churches in town.
Jubilee.
But from all of the churches and other groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and they went out and volunteered. She found ways of getting people who needed things, and they went in, they painted people's houses, they built ramps for needy people. They did all kinds of things and landscaped some people's yards. And it was, I think, for 4 or 5 years that she did that. And then it got to be so large it was overwhelming. And so it was passed over to another organization, I think, for a couple years, and it eventually died out. But Marilyn Norda was a very good-hearted person, and I would like to close in her memory tonight. So I want to tell you a little bit about the what happened at Fox Canyon today. And I know I'm taking up your time, but these are getting to the heart of the sustainability plan, the STIGMA, Sustainability Groundwater Management Plans. And so staff had come in and advertised as a public hearing an ordinance that was going to, they said it was going to divide the water 60-40, with municipalities getting 40% and farmers getting 60%. That would be the goal, but for the first 5 years, the cities would be down at about 30 to 35%, it was somewhere, and the farmers would be up here in the 70s someplace. And then the cities would remain constant for 5 years, and the farmers would ramp down. And then everybody would start ramping down until the aquifer gets to a sustainable yield. We heard from all kinds of people that didn't like that, as most things do. I mean, people don't like change. So what the board ended up doing with a suggestion that came in yesterday, I'm not sure where it came from, but it was to get rid of this 60-40 split and just tell everybody you're going to start where you are. You start right now, and then everybody ramps down at the same. And that took away all the arguments of, I'm not getting my share, because it's your 10-year record. The 10 years includes rainy years, it includes drought years. So everybody's got the same playing field, and that appealed to the board. I'm going to tell you about that. That's a significant change to an ordinance. In addition to that, we discussed the thing that's important to Camarillo, the wells that are on property that had been annexed 20, 30 years ago, but we never got the water from those wells. And that had been on a 2-to-1. In other words, it had been 2 acre-feet for agriculture, and cities get 1. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out for that. But in the future, with the acknowledgement there's not going to be much conversion of ag land, of annexation, there still will be conversion of ag land within a city. Those wells will convert on a 1-to-1 basis. So that's the first thing I'd heard that was making cities equal. And remember, I represent the cities that overlie the Fox Canyon Aquifer, which are Camarillo, Port Hueneme, Oxnard, Ventura, and Moore Park. And their staff, the farmers had asked last time that you could borrow from the future, and by borrowing, they're also, if you don't use up your whole allocation, you'll be able to save up credits. I don't like that, because that got us into a big problem. The only time anybody wants to use credits is when there's a drought. When there's a drought, there isn't any water, so nothing's going down into that aquifer. So, and the aquifer's already been overdrafted, and it's got saltwater intrusion and all that stuff. So we did decide today there would be no borrowing from the future. If you use more and you don't have, if we're going to allow credits, and if you don't have credits, then you're going to pay the penalty. At any rate, with those changes, I pushed that we not have the first reading of the ordinance. When you completely change every provision in an ordinance, you can't say, we're just going to read the title and have the first reading and we'll come back with a completely different ordinance. Council said we legally could, but after I made my plea, several of the other board members felt we should wait. It will be introduced on the 9th. Everybody needs to look at it and read it whenever it comes out. I did not get a packet, so we're all going to be assuming we're going to be looking at the website and downloading, printing our own packets. Apparently nobody got a packet for today. I don't know if they'll come tomorrow or when. But I wanted to take the time to tell you that we are working on this. We've been working on it 3 years now? Something like that. And they very much want an ordinance that will take effect January 1st because that is when the reporting periods start, and they want the whole year to be the same. I've been there 12 years, and I still don't understand why a reporting year starts in January when the water year starts in October, but it is that way, and it's too late to say we're going to start it in October. But I believe that what we're going to have is actually going to be more equitable for the cities than what the other plan was. So all those changes came about today and in the last 24 hours. I read the new plan this morning when I got up.
So do you think it was productive today then?
I thought it was very productive, and we went from 1:30 to 6:15.
A long day.
Yeah, it was a very, very productive afternoon. Okay, so with that, we still have more study session and another closed session. And so we will, do we anticipate any kind of an announcement?
We do not.
Okay, so we will recess to a study session and another closed session, and then we will adjourn.